All right, we are starting the recording for the azPHP meetup in June 2017. We have Paul Redmond with us. He's about to present.
Actually.
Sorry, close your eyes. Hi, I'm Paul. DJ, I appreciate your comment. Just being a new developer, it's awesome just seeing you break into this industry. I broke into this industry about 10 years ago. I was doing mechanical engineering and just decided a career change. And it was like the best thing ever. It was so good for me. So I'm really excited for you to get started in this field. It's really cool to see somebody just starting out. I mean, I think I kind of forget that being, I've been doing this about 10 years, so kind of forget what it's like to start out. I've been pretty fortunate and blessed along the way with really good mentors and good coworkers and just a lot of good friends that help me grow. So try to, this is, even when you're been around a while, surround yourself with mentors. Even when you're 10 years in, there's always somebody that knows something that you don't know that you can learn from. And hopefully that is true tonight. So anyway, this talk, it's my first presentation like in public. I've presented in companies before, but it's kind of a weird topic for me for my first one, I think. But for some reason it just struck a chord, and I talked to Jeremy about doing this presentation because I had to do a little web scraping recently, and it's not something that I was familiar with. So it was kind of a new acquired skill. Just briefly about myself, and I got a little more info at the end because I'd rather just talk about stuff that you guys can learn and not so much about myself. But I've been, like I said, doing this for about 10 years. I work at a company called Freestar. We're over off of like 44th Street in Thomas. It's a small little ad tech company. And so what we do is we deliver monetization ad strategies for publishers. So publishers might have ads on their site. We help them run ads and improve their revenue, sometimes 4x or more their revenue just through our technology. So like I said, it's a little startup, and I kind of got to greenfield a few things, which was exciting. Picked a little bit of Laravel and Docker and Google Cloud, so we're using Kubernetes, just a lot of somewhat familiar tech, but also tech that I'm still getting used to. And also now we're doing like things like Java and Vue.js. I think I've been coding in Vue.js for like the last month straight, and I'm ready for some PHP again. Just a little bit of JavaScript fatigue, but anyway, okay. So I've kind of talked about myself. I want to talk about maybe what hopefully you guys will learn or pick up a little bit tonight. So there's different types of scraping and when to use them. I'm not an expert. Like I said, this is something that I just picked up. So I'm not super authoritative on this topic, but I think I've collected a lot of good information over the last couple of months to be able to pass on some knowledge that you can enhance and extend on your own. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about different types of scraping and when to use them, when they're appropriate. Using Laravel Dusk for rapid browser automation. If you're familiar with Dusk, it's a testing library for the Laravel framework, and so you can do like functional testing with your Laravel app. You might have some asynchronous JavaScript on your app. So Dusk can deal with stuff like that. It uses Chrome driver, which we'll go into a little bit. You can also use Dusk just for its browser class. It offers some nice abstractions over just using PHP WebDriver. Who's used PHP WebDriver or heard of it at least? Put your hand down or keep your hand up if you used it. Put it down if you haven't actually used it. Okay, nice, cool. So hopefully it's some new territory here for some people. Different ways to run browser automation. Like how do you run this stuff? Both environment and just what are ways that you're going to trigger it off, like start it. And run it in a server environment, like I said. When you're running something in like DigitalOcean or Amazon, you don't have a monitor, so you have to, work with that environment in order to run browser automation. So, a browser uses a monitor to display the browser to the user. You don't have that luxury in a server environment. So we're going to kind of talk about that. So what is web scraping? This is my own definition. I've always felt like it was just kind of a dirty job. Like you always look at those developers as just kind of like, I don't know, it feels just like a shady kind of slimy thing. I don't know why. Gathering data from HTML and other media for the purposes of testing, data enrichment, and collection. So Google is probably the biggest scraper on the planet. I'm sure they are. I don't have any factual information on that or stats, but I know for sure that they're the biggest scraper in the world. They scrape hundreds of millions of pages and other media on the web. So I kind of linked to this little like marketing thing, but basically, talks about web scraping on a very high level. So why do we need scraping? We are going to get to some code, some actual code, but I thought I'd start with a little bit of a summary of just an overview, if you will. So just bear with me a moment. So why do we need scraping? Maybe we want to do some market analysis. Maybe, for instance, Best Buy, maybe they want to see what Amazon's doing on their computers. Well, what's the best way to do that? Maybe scraping is a way that they do that just to kind of keep an eye on the competition. I'm sure there's multiple ways. I don't know for sure. I'm just guessing that would be a good candidate for market analysis. You're in a hyper-competitive market and you need to get an edge, or at least keep up with your competitors and match or beat what they're doing, which is the second point. So scraping can also increase like learning and understanding. If you think about Google, they get smarter every second that they're out scraping the web. And maybe the people searching on the web are getting a little dumber by the second or smarter. I don't know. I guess I'll leave that to you guys to decide. But the other thing you can do with scraping is monitor trends. What's changing. Like Twitter. What's trending on Twitter. Twitter probably has other ways of getting that data, but maybe just as an example, maybe you could monitor your own trends. So combine multiple offers into one portal. So I was thinking like Google Shopping. So maybe they're aware of a bunch of products, like a Samsung Galaxy, and they can quickly tell you that there's these 5 places you can buy this phone, and this is how much it is at each place. And analytics, just data. So I like to relate concepts to like things that aren't necessarily related, just concrete things in my mind, like kind of like a mouse and a computer, even though it's it kind of looks like a mouse. It's just I like to kind of like it makes me use the other side of my brain. So these are kind of the other types of data scraping that maybe I thought about. So like competitor scanning. I was just in Fry's and there was this dude like he looked like I don't know a spy or something. And he had like this little device and he was like scanning stuff real quickly and looking around. So that, he was probably scanning just prices at Fry's for a competitor. Military intelligence, using satellite and just imagery, Google Maps as well, how do they, I don't know how they track traffic, but perhaps, their satellites are scraping and trying to look for patterns in traffic from way up above. Again, I don't know for sure how they actually get like traffic, but it's just a nice thought, but maybe this is one way to do it. Surveillance and metering. So this is a World War I blimp, and so a lot of ways that they would collect data in World War I is they would float these balloons way up in the air, and they would look at artillery positions and enemy positions, and then send flags or other signals down. Because at this point, artillery had gotten a little more powerful and could reach a little further. So they were up there collecting a bunch of data. Anyway, just kind of to get your mind racing about this is your water meter at your house. Somebody comes by and just collects a reading every month and then charges you, and hopefully it's you didn't have a leak and it wasn't like $1,000 because it's happened to me. I wish I had more data analysis on my own water meter so I would know when something was going on. Okay, so is web scraping legitimate? Yes, it can be. There's definitely some bad practices. There's some bad uses of web scraping out there. I feel like it has a bad negative connotation when you say web scraping. Maybe as a developer, I'm like, yep, that's like, that's like I said, a dirty job. It's not fun. But so anyway, basically, it can be legitimate if you're not doing bad illegal stuff. If you're being nice, careful, and respectful with the way that you're, automating. We'll kind of cover a little bit of that. So these are kind of the buzzwords I use for just keeping it legitimate: speed, caution, intent, empathy, and honesty. So go slow. Don't overwhelm a site that is okay with you scraping it. You can, I've been on, like a top 50 U.S. publishing site, seeing bot patterns and traffic where we had to block, bots because they were overwhelming our servers, and our autoscalers were going crazy and costing us money. So we went and blocked them. So just watch it, because if you're aggressive, you could get banned or blocked when you might even have a good intention with your scraping. So use caution. Coding mistakes could create things like unintended load or maybe deleting something. Intent, even if your intention is pure, always question like what you're doing with scraping, and make sure that it fits both legally and ethically. Just make sure that you're going about your business in a way that's ethical. Use empathy. So put yourself in the shoes of like website owners if you're scraping their sites. And again, it goes back to like these other three, making sure that you're not overwhelming their servers. And like honesty, you don't like scrape stuff like personally identifiable information, copyrights, and stuff like that. So so when do we scrape? Sorry, this is like deciding when it might be appropriate to scrape or when we think we should. So like, what's the purpose of the scraper? Can we live without that data? If you can live without it, maybe you don't need to scrape it. Do they have an API? This is actually what got me into scraping this year. A lot of we needed a bunch of data from third parties that we were working with, but a lot of them, A, have terrible user interfaces, and B, they don't have APIs. So if they had an API, I would definitely use that. The data is going to be kind of formatted in a better way anyway and more predictable. So if yes, does the API have everything you need? There were a couple APIs in the last couple months as I've been doing some of this scraping that didn't have everything I needed. And do they allow scraping? I can kind of show you some examples of like when it might not be feasible. I'll go into in a second. So the downsides of scraping real quick. I kind of did this on purpose. So changes in the HTML and DOM break scrapers. That's the biggest downside. You can't get around this because you don't own the site. If they change, like I had this one, and they probably used some fancy JavaScript framework they got invented yesterday or something, and they changed the way that they were using the name attribute on inputs. And it was like underscore name was the attribute. So it broke all of my scraping. And, in my particular case, this is actually like we're logging in somewhere and we're downloading an Excel or a CSV report of some kind, and then taking that data offline and processing it. So we definitely made sure that we were, that it was okay with, when you're working with somebody and they don't have an API, you kind of, if you need the data for your business, you kind of have to figure out other things, which is why I'm kind of here tonight. So rich JavaScript apps can really cause headaches when you're doing automation, so I'm going to show you a few things around that. But if you have something asynchronous happening on the page in your browser automation, you can't find the element, it's going to fail. So that's kind of a little bit of a challenge, but we can deal with that challenge pretty easily. And then there's like more manual processing and formatting of the data once you get it, because it's in HTML or possibly, like I said, in my case, I'm downloading CSV files and then I have to go process those and put them into some kind of normalized formats, that I can store for later. And I mentioned again, changes in the HTML and DOM break scrapers. You can't get past that. You just have to live with it. It's part of the territory. So how do we possibly overcome some of these downsides? Try to match DOM selectors defensively. This is kind of something that I can't scientifically explain to you. It's just an art. It's like CSS targeting. Some selectors are a little more defensive than others. If you use like really specific selectors and they change one little element, it's going to break your scraping because you can't find that element. So try to think about, well, if they move this element around a little bit, could my stuff still work? It's, like I said, kind of an art that takes practice. And make sure you handle failure. I'll kind of go into that with PHP WebDriver. Makes that pretty easy because you can it'll throw exceptions that you can handle. Get good alerting, notifications, and reporting if you're doing this. Like I'm using Bugsnag, and then Sentry's another one. Depending on what your environment's like, I know like with Laravel, both of those are really easy to install, like in less than an hour. And so I just send these to Slack and whatever other alerting that you're using. So you can kind of assess, is this something that I need to work on now, or can it wait till Monday? Because it always happens on Sunday. I don't know. And then just learn to accept that it will break sometimes. So just like I said, kind of something you just have to anticipate. So scraping tools. I'm going to kind of categorize these into 3 tools. Hopefully I'm not putting you guys to sleep. I'm sorry. You guys have any questions yet, or no? So I kind of categorize these into 3 things: anonymous HTTP requests, your basic scraping, like checking the HTML and maybe grabbing some things from it. The other type is like testing, like functional testing of your application, and then full browser automation tasks, which is really like the part that hopefully is the most interesting out of this. So anonymous scraping is it's like the fastest, easiest to run and reproduce. It's just speaking HTTP. PHP has a good DOM parsing tool. The one I like is Gout. Sorry, I always pronounce it that. That's the wrong pronunciation. It's actually Goot. So let's see. I'm just going to skip this. It's basically like, this is like the testing stuff. I categorize it as kind of a way to scrape because it's literally doing the same thing. It's just using PHP unit with it. And then full browser automation is like testing, but like scraping to download things or to grab elements, in an interactive app or something, and do something with the data. I have a demo of that, like grabbing something that needs to wait, and then grabbing that and doing something with it. And these kind of require more tooling than the first kind that I was telling you about. You'll have to use something like Selenium, WebDriver, or Phantom, and they generally run slower than just the raw HTTP tests. So here's some tools that you can use for scraping. You can just use PHP's curl. That's probably something you don't want to do, but you could use curl and use like DOM documents. Take the HTML and do something with it. Goot, Guzzle, which is just an HTTP library. HTTP full is another HTTP library. PHP WebDriver is like the big browser automation tool. It's done by Facebook. And I guess you could use file get contents. It's kind of an idea. There's different ways to like grab this data. Yeah.
Why not use curl?
What's that?
Why not use curl folding? Instead of FO.
Well, you could. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm definitely not condoning it. But you're going to be more productive with a tool like Goot because it deals with the HTTP layer, it deals with redirects, and then it gives you back a DOM crawler that you can quickly parse out elements. So it's all about productivity.
So Goot actually uses Guzzle and Guzzle uses curl. So you're actually using all 3 of those.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Why would you just use curl?
What about
But I guess because all these other ones, the stack basically parses it out easier or something.
Yeah, different layers of abstraction.
Yeah, so that exactly. Thank you. If for the people on the that maybe didn't hear that on the audio, the question is basically why not just use curl instead of some of these other tools? And all these tools like build on top of each other. So that's the idea. It's building abstractions that make your job easier. And I think it's important to understand. It would take me a little research to use just raw curl now because it's been so long. So what other tools have you guys used? Are there any others that I didn't mention up here that maybe you guys have used?
Just use a Mac app called fake.app.
Yeah.
And you could basically JavaScript anything, and it was just a browser you could totally automate.
Oh, that's awesome.
Fopen.
Fopen?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
technically you can open the socket to it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. So this is where we'll get kind of into like some code a little bit. HTTP scraping. This is the first one I mentioned. It's just getting a raw. It's just speaking HTTP with the site and then getting some data from it. So I kind of alluded to this before, but I always call it Gout. I don't know why, it looks like it, but it is Vue, and this is like the best tool in my opinion.
You have to think French if you want to pronounce it right.
French. Yeah. So,
French would be Vite. What's on the loop?
So we kind of alluded to this. Qt uses Symfony Browser Kit and DOM crawler to simulate like browsing. Like you can click links with Qt after you get the request back or the response back. Sorry, and then the DOM crawler for like traversal of the DOM. Like I mentioned, it uses Guzzle for the requests, which uses curl. You can get inside cookies and you can browse the history. Definitely check that out. Some of its capabilities, like I said, clicking on links, extracting and filtering data, submitting forms. You can follow redirects, which is nice. If you get a request that's like a 301 redirect, it'll just follow it for you. So that's kind of nice. And you can get the actual URL after the response comes back, so you can tell if it, if it's different than the original request that you try to make. And let's go into some of this real quick. Okay. So this is like just a Composer file. Is anybody not familiar with Composer? It's basically the package manager for PHP. So there's two here that this particular part. I'll send out this repo that has some of this stuff in it. We're using Qt and we're using the Symfony console. I just did that because just to demo, like when I'm building like command line stuff, I just always use the Symfony console. If you're using Symfony, the project, it ships with the console, and then Laravel, has a console. Let's see here. And then here's just the basic app. I have some commands here that I'm going to run just to kind of show you a couple examples. Basically, it's just booting up a console application and then adding a few commands here. So the first one that I'm going to cover here is this Scrape Hacker News. So you can kind of see like, let me go into the basic command real quick here just to show you. So there's the Qt client, input and output, and then during the initialize, just building a Qt client. Let's see. Okay, so basically the execute line is when you run this command from the console, just making a request, and then it's using the crawler here to go grab all the story links off the first page of Hacker News. I could have expanded this to like do pagination and grab all the links for like 10 pages or something, but maybe you can just practice that on your own if you want to. Basically the idea is here, get all these links, and then here's the DOM crawler instance, the crawler instance that I was telling you about that Qt returns. And now I can filter and I'm just looping through each of these links that I've grabbed, and then I'm just outputting them to the console. So real basic stuff. Let's see here. You're typing behind your back. So you can see the console like gives you a nice little output of like what commands you have available. Real quick, this will happen real fast. Just going to go to Hacker News and it's going to return the links that are on the homepage. So I just, like I said, requested HTML, grabbed all the links and pushed them out. So that's not very interesting. Hopefully you can use your imagination a little bit here on some of these, but let's go in here. So then I have another example here that's doing something a little more interesting, recursive links command. So basically the idea is to get an argument from the console, a URL of some kind, and then recursively grab the links on the page. I'm not going to go too crazy on this. I'll just go like one level deep. So it'll get all the links on the first URL, and then it will follow those, and then it will return all the links on those URLs. So the idea here is, again, just grab the links, loop through them, and then, let's see here. It gets them recursively. I'll show you that part, sorry. So it just, and I'm not going for like the most pretty code here, but this is just the idea is that's how many deep it's going to go. By default 3, I pass 1. So it's going to tell you it's getting the links to the URL, it's going to go out and get them. If it's matched the level of depth, then it's just going to return the links, and then it's going to recursively down here show you the children there. So after that's all done, I'm just going to loop through each children of the links that I gathered, and then I'm going to output those. So this one. Sorry. Okay, I'm just using example.com because there's only like a couple links on here, and I don't want to like have this thing run forever. It does. If you think about it, if you're going 3 levels of recursion deep, that's going to grab a lot of links. So this one is just going to show you. So it's grabbing example, and then all the links on top of it. There was really only one, and then that one had links under it. So you can kind of see just another example of grabbing links. And then there's an analysis command. So let's, just for example, let's say that you want to look for all the no follows on a page, or the do follows. Like you can't use those options together. So there's a little check here, like if the option to do and no follow are both, it'll just throw an exception and tell you that. And then it will go make the request to URL. And if it's a no follow, the selector is just going to be a little different. Now this is basically like CSS selectors that Gud is going to process and return the DOM elements to you. And if there's a not selector, if it's not. So let's run that one real quick so you can kind of see. Wow. I've been typing artisan all day, so. I'll do Yahoo here. So this is going to show me all the no follows on Yahoo's homepage. And notice that I just typed in yahoo.com, which actually resolves to www.yahoo.com. So Gud's taking care of the redirect for me. You can see there's the 8 no follow links, and then I'll do a do follow. There's more. This is just really basic, just so you can kind of get the idea of like, you can just do whatever you want with the DOM once you get it back. There's all that.
You had issues with malformed HTML, and it freaking out because somebody forgot to close a bracket or.
That's a really good question. The question is like, do you deal with like malformed, DOM elements? I haven't seen a ton of it lately, but I think it'd be good to explore that a little more. Gud and PHP's DOM parser is pretty solid. So I've done a fair bit of using it and haven't really run into issues on. Like for instance, I was doing this project where we were grabbing like the HTML source and converting into AMP tags, and the site wasn't the greatest example of like really solid markup, and we didn't really run into any problems, and we're doing hundreds of millions of requests. So I don't know. I think it's still a good question, and I believe like you probably just get some exception and you like you couldn't find the element, or maybe it would throw an exception. I don't know.
Does Gud use libxml too, the DOM parser for doing?
I don't know. That is a good question.
See if it does, it has an HTML mode and it has like a recovery. Just it might not be identical to the way a browser would fix it.
Sure.
So
Right.
sometimes it can make for nonsensical HTML, but it should never blow up unless you have really weird character set stuff, which I have run into in the past.
So I just want to let's see. Roughly, do we go like an hour and a half? I just want to make sure I can.
How much time do you want?
I think like an hour.
More?
Well, no, not another hour, just like total. So
Yeah, it'll be fun.
is that you guys okay? I can pick up the pace if this is boring because I'm trying to make something that is kind of boring interesting. So hopefully. Okay, so ways you might use it for testing. I'm just going to go over this one real quick. You can use Gud for this as well. I had a lot of, and maybe Tim, you can attest to this because you worked with me for a little while. You do hundreds of thousands of redirects on the site in Apache or Nginx redirects. You need to kind of make sure that they're all going to work right. So I've built like elaborate just basically web scrapers that would make an option HTTP request and make sure that the responses were valid. Migrating a whole section of content that's worth a lot of money as far as like ad revenue and Google ranking. You want to make sure that you're responding with a 300, and then on the other end you're getting a 200 eventually. So Good is a really good tool for that. Just parsing a CSV. I like to use the League CSV package for parsing CSVs. You take your data set, the expected 300, 301, or 302s, and then where you expect them to go, and run those against your test server just to make sure before you do big large site migrations. So that's not necessarily like testing as far as like testing your code to make sure that your code is working. It's just testing things like redirects and scraping. And then obviously like health checks and health probes as well. You might need to write your own custom ones. Quick example of like a functional test that just asserts HTML. This is a Symfony framework example. And then Laravel, it's your basic stuff. Now let's get into the full browser automation. So question that I'm posing is, why do we need full browser automation tools? So just to simulate like real browsers so you can work with async JavaScript is one of the big reasons. My specific need of why I needed like full browser automation is I needed to download some files, right? And inside of applications that are using JavaScript. That's really not possible to do with something like Vue. Let's see. So, the other really important uses of it is like replacing repetitive QA with automation and making sure like stuff runs in multiple browsers. And then, like I said, advanced web scraping, which is hopefully what I'd like to go into more. So notable tools in browser automation, we have Selenium. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with that. The W3 WebDriver, which we're going to use some Chrome driver. And then headless browsers. You have like Phantom.js, Chrome headless. Chrome 59 just came out, and there's a headless mode. I just have a little note here that says it's not quite working for me yet with Chrome driver. So still kind of just trying to figure that out. And then Zombie.js is another one. I personally use like Phantom and Chrome. Are the two that I use with like WebDriver. I have examples of both of those. Some notable tools in like doing browser automation with like Selenium, Behat and Mink. It's like PHP WebDriver, Codeception and Dusk use WebDriver, and then Steward is one I haven't heard of, but you can basically like run PHP unit tests with Chrome driver stuff really quickly. So that's one you might want to check out. Let's see. Any others that you guys have used before to like do browser testing? A couple other languages. I'm really jealous of like the Selenium WebDriver bindings in Python. They're really good. I haven't done a ton of Python, but when I was playing with like WebDriver, a lot of the examples I was looking at were in Python, and it's a great package. It's awesome. A couple other ones. Python is actually a really good tool to use for scraping. I'm going to try to show you like how you can just do it with PHP if you're already a PHP developer. But Python and Ruby are both pretty good tools for it as well. And JavaScript, there's a bunch here: Nightwatch, Zombie, Phantom, WebDriver, Casper. I tried a little bit. There are some challenges around using it that I ran into, but I'm probably just not as much of a JavaScript expert.
What did you say about Python?
I really like the Selenium WebDriver bindings, the actual WebDriver package. Facebook put out the one for PHP, but the Python one just feels a little more like crisp, like well done, if you know what I mean. It's a really solid one. And like I said, a lot of the web scraping examples on the internet use that Python and Selenium. So, I kind of pose this question to myself: why would I use PHP for web browser automation? Everybody was telling me to use Python, Ruby, JavaScript, Node. the thing that kind of annoyed me is like developers they either have to learn a new language, that could be good or bad. That just depends. But if your team's already doing a bunch of PHP, then you might get more participation. People that can jump in a lot quicker. You kind of don't play some cross-language mental overhead when, context switching. I personally, this might not be a problem for other people, but for me, context switching into different languages, I try to avoid it as much as I can. I try to learn new languages, but doing that context switch, when you're trying to do something or get something done, can be challenging. Also, like a lot of my domain logic, business logic is already in PHP, so my browser automation is now a little closer to that. There might be an argument for decoupling it, but anyway, I like my browser automation to be kind of closer to my domain logic. So that's exactly one of the biggest reasons why I picked PHP. And then the WebDriver, it's good enough, and it's backed by Facebook, so it's not a shoddy library. It's going to work for you pretty well. So how do I run browser automation? I guess I mentioned earlier, you have Chrome headless, the standalone Selenium, WebDriver, which I'm going to show you. That's the one I like, and Phantom is decent too. I like to use WebDriver with Chrome, just because it feels like it's simulating close to a user environment as possible. But Phantom is pretty solid. I'm not going to run these for you, but you can kind of start experimenting with Chrome headless. If you follow this link, and just pretty much you can just search headless Chrome. This will probably show up, and you can even use the REPL and do window.location, and it'll give you some feedback like in a REPL environment, which is really cool.
Did you say you couldn't get headless working in Chrome?
I can't get it right now. I'm having trouble getting it working with WebDriver, and I'll kind of go over my Docker setup with you. There's some other things that were kind of tricky to figure out at first that I gleaned from the Selenium Docker image. It's basically we'll cover that for sure. I'm just going to jump into a few WebDriver code examples here. Okay, so I have a Dusk example, which we're going to get into a little bit later. Here's the init that I'm just using. Again, I'm not going for the best code here. It's just demo purposes. So I did grab a little bit of this from Dusk because I like their setup. The idea here is in this, then I have Chrome driver and Phantom. It's not showing the Windows executables, but they're in there, and they'll hopefully work for you. I didn't try it because I don't use Windows. But they should work. So the idea here is basically just getting the driver suffix to match up this Chrome driver version that you're going to use in binaries. This is actually building the Chrome process that's going to run in the background. This is the Chrome driver. It's using the Symfony process component, which I'm going to show you a couple different ways. You can just run Chrome driver in the background on your machine. Or you can do it this way. It just kind of takes care of it for you. Basically, the idea is here, we'll just spin up that driver on your machine. And then this is the actual remote web driver. This is the Facebook remote web driver. I'm picking Chrome, and then I'm not setting any arguments, but I'll show you an example later where you can set a download path. This is where you would set the headless flag. So. Anyway, you get the idea. So that's where, once I get that working, you can run Chrome in the headless mode with this. And then it's just the default port that Chrome driver communicates on is 9515. I have a Phantom one here too, which is the same thing. It's just Phantom. And then it's communicating on Phantom's port that is default. And then the driver for that, you can see in this case, it's a remote web driver, and then there's this method the static method here on desired capabilities saying I want to use Phantom for this. So I'm going to show you what vanilla WebDriver kind of looks like. So you can see that the function I just showed you. You're building the Chrome process and you're starting Chrome driver, and then it kind of needs to boot up. So since I'm using Dusk here, it's using this retry function. which basically it's just going to try 5 times, like every 50 milliseconds is the idea. So if it's tried 5 times and it can't connect to the driver, then it's going to throw an exception. That's kind of important because that'll kind of throw you off if it's giving you like errors saying you can't connect to Chrome driver. This is like a little WordPress DigitalOcean thing that I spun up, and I'm going to run this in a sec. Before I forget, I'm actually going to make this sleep so I can switch to my browser. Make it sleep for like 5 seconds or something, so I can switch and show you what it looks like. Because since I'm on my machine and not in the server environment, it'll boot up the browser. So I'm just going to show you really quickly here. I'm not actually going to log into my WordPress here. I'm just going to go to the page, and then I'm going to fill out a bad username and login, and then I'm going to spit back out on the console the error that happened, just to show you like, how you start up driver, how you actually make a request and then let it do its thing. And I think you can agree with me after you see the Dusk stuff, that it's a really nice abstraction over top of just using raw Facebook WebDriver. So after it makes a request, you kind of need to wait for the request to happen. So it's just going to wait until it locates this ID on the page. So it's presence of all elements located by, like, house. But I understand why it's verbose. But, so if you're just using PHP WebDriver, this is kind of what you have to work with. After that happens, as long as it works, then the next thing we're going to do is use a CSS selector to get the username input. And then we're going to send keys, and then we're going to do the same with the password. And then we're going to check the remember me, just so I can demo to you like how you would check something. And then we're going to submit it. And then we're going to wait for the login error. And then when that happens, we're going to find the element. And then we're going to get the text off of it. And then I'm just going to throw it into the console. You do a little better here, copy and paste. Hopefully this doesn't fail now that I'm standing in front of you. It was working perfectly earlier. Okay. I think it's sleeping. Oh, it already came back. Hold on. Sorry, let me try again. Yeah, so you can see that it actually did work. But let me actually, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool that it's a little gratifying to see that it actually worked. No, happens pretty quick, but it's kind of cool. So that's just a basic example of using WebDriver. Any questions at this point? Or am I boring you guys too? Yeah, go ahead.
How would you use that? Like, you don't have to make a whole example, but explain like how would I run an headless browser, for instance, let's say Chrome or server mouse. I want to do the same thing. The reason being because, for instance, maybe the page doesn't render unless it's in the JavaScript environment, the doc runs. So how would I do something similar to that to actually pull it from if I were to use the Chrome browser?
Oh, like on a server?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is running what I just demoed inside of a headless environment. We're going to get to that, but basically there's some software on. I only run Linux servers, so that's the only solution that I'm going to give you guys tonight. I don't even know if there's any others, but basically, yeah, there's a way to simulate a monitor to allow you to work with a browser in an environment where you don't actually have a monitor. So,
I guess the purpose of why I'm asking is because, like I said before, let's say that there's content that is, JavaScript. Yeah, basically it's all JavaScript based in the sense that if you were to view source, you wouldn't actually see it because it's all document rights in memory. But I still want that DOM.
Yep.
So it's like after processing,
You can get that one.
Yeah, so basically, if you notice at the beginning the wait using, there's some stuff for JavaScript as well. I'm not sure exactly how you do it directly with PHP WebDriver, but I've used it in Dusk. And you can just wait on a JavaScript assertion, and once it's true, it'll process, or it will throw an exception if it doesn't happen within the time frame that you give it. So I think that answers your question. If not, we can chat a little afterwards as well. Okay. Let's see. Also, I'll show you this real quick. I'm not closing these, so you can't see it on this screen, but I have like 3 little Chrome windows here because I didn't close them. So let me close these. And so that's how you would do it. This is PHP 7, and it's using finally just to quit the Chrome process. Otherwise, the Chrome process, I believe Symfony actually shuts it down even if you don't, but you can stop it with that whenever you want to. So you have control over stopping it when your PHP script is executing. And then you can quit the browser. And if you don't do that and you're running this in Docker, you're going to have Chrome processes start piling up because they're not closed, and your server's going to quit. So eventually, if you keep running and opening Chrome, it'll just spin up a new Chrome environment every time. Let's see, go back. Sure. Not sure why Chrome isn't. Okay, because it's in full screen. Okay. So I already kind of showed you this, but I just wanted to put it on the slide as well. So this is how you like run Chrome driver through PHP. I could run it on the command line as well, just for those binaries in the background. So a couple techniques for triggering browser automation, like I'm showing you by running console commands, but maybe you want some eager tasks, so you might run them on a scheduler. I'm using Laravel, which has a scheduler built into it, which is really nice for doing eager, and that's exactly how I'm running a lot of my automation at my company is. On a schedule, the report is completed by X time, and then we're going to trigger off and go download it. And it's usually like early in the morning before I get to work, which is kind of cool. So basically the concept is that, at least for the Laravel scheduler, is it runs one cron. I'm running it a little differently in Docker, but the concept is like a cron, and it runs every minute, and then you have a Fluent API to determine if a task should run or not. Depending, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then, so there's the on-demand and the eager, and then there's maybe an event trigger. You might want to trigger some browser automation or scraping when an event happens. I have a little queue demonstration. It's sending a post request to an app, and then it triggers a queue. And Laravel also has a queue. So all of these things are kind of built into the Laravel ecosystem. And I mean, you obviously, if you're not using Laravel, you can figure all these things out. But in my opinion, it's kind of nice that it's taken care of for you, and that's all in one kind of neat environment. And then, what are some other ways? I don't know. Those are the 3 I came up with. Are there other ways you might want to? I mean, I don't know what Google does.
AWS Lambda.
There you go. I was thinking like event triggering. Another good example might be if I'm on Webmaster Tools and I submit my sitemap XML, I'm guessing somewhere that triggers an event or puts you in a queue somewhere for Google to go scrape your site. So that's another example of like event triggering. That's just my guess of how they do it, or something similar to that pattern. So again, I'm a fanboy. I'm a Laravel fanboy. I definitely don't have an ego to go with it though. I just love the tool. So I apologize for my over fanboyness here. But it's the framework that I use a lot, and I'm really happy with what it's doing for me. And I've tried out all the frameworks. So I definitely, I'm not unfamiliar with other parts of the ecosystem, and I worked with Symfony for a long time. I love like the Symfony components. Okay, so just a quick intro to Dusk. It's basically like what we've already been showing you with WebDriver, but it's providing some abstractions on top of it. The main use case is for browser testing in the Laravel project with Chrome to do functional testing, and it makes it pretty easy to get going. You don't have to drop in a tool like the hat. I like the hat. The hat is cool, like doing the cucumber style behavior-driven development tests is fine. If you just want to get going quickly with, you can use use Dusk if you're using Laravel for that. The other thing is it doesn't require Selenium or the JDK, which I really like because I'm not a Java fan. And it just uses the standalone Chrome driver, which is kind of where I'm showing you, most of the examples. Do I have to use Laravel with Dusk? No. You don't have to use it. I'm going to show you like a standalone example. I think it's a really nice just browser automation tool. That's what that's what I'm using it for right now. Even though I run Laravel, I'm using Dusk like a browser automation tool and not a testing tool. So I'm going to just show you, even if you maybe don't use Laravel, I'm just going to show you like some of the stuff I talked about with like scheduling and pawns and queues and events that really help kind of facilitate this automation stuff. So some Dusk basics. You already saw some of the examples, but basically like getting the value of an input by a selector, setting the value, getting the text from an element, and getting an attribute off of a selector. So you can see the syntax is a little nicer on the eyes than the other one, but under the hood this is using the web driver, PHP web driver. Basic link stuff, clicking on links. The click link I don't use a lot. It's a little, I don't know, I think it's a little difficult just to use. Like the way that it tries to find the element is a little, I like to just have a little more comfort in using a selector and then clicking the element. But you can use that. There's mouse over. I'm going to show you an example of that. And then like you can even do stuff like drag and drop, which is pretty cool. I'm just showing drag here, but there's a drop as well, which is a pretty complicated user action. Let's see. And then like you can do like scope stuff, so you can select an element, and then within that scope a link click or something. And then like form inputs. So that's how you like type in an input. I should have put the regular WebDriver example there. That's how you clear, select element. That's how you select an option. You can do a random one and then submit things. And then the waiting part that I was telling you. This bottom one, that's the JavaScript waiting stuff that I was showing you earlier. If you need to wait on some kind of a sync thing that's setting a property, that's just a basic example. You can even run like JavaScript code. If you're using like Dusk for like your testing, it even injects like jQuery. And you can use jQuery, like, Dusk goes into the DOM and adds jQuery if it's not already there. And then you can like write jQuery scripts for your, part of your browser automation if you need to get down and dirty on the page with some JavaScript for some reason. I'm just going to show you the example that we saw earlier, but with Dusk. So same starts off and does the same thing. Gets the Chrome driver, and it's identical. It's the same functions from the init. I'm showing you a macro here. Laravel has a thing called, a lot of its elements are macroable. This is overkill for what we're doing, but I just wanted to demonstrate like some of the cool stuff that the browser can do. So I just have this little WordPress login macro, and now I can use it anywhere, and it will just, I pass those 3 arguments, and then it will do all that for me. And then I'm building the Dusk browser here, and I'm passing it the driver that we booted up, and then I'm calling that macro that I set up, and then doing the same thing. So I'm not going to run this because I feel like I'm maybe going. I want to get through a little more interesting stuff. But you can kind of see how quickly this cut down on the amount of code you have to write to get this done. And then there's a Phantom example. You can look at that in the repo later, but it does the same thing. It just runs through Phantom instead of Chrome.
And just a heads up, it's probably not worthwhile to spend any time with Phantom.js since the lead dev said he's not supporting it anymore.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Say that again?
Yeah, when Chrome Headless came out, the lead dev of Phantom.js said he's done. So
Yeah.
spend your time focusing on Chrome Headless instead.
Yeah.
What is the selector that is being used there?
For
So the first
Is it on this or what's that?
What is log or PWD?
Sorry, can you speak up?
On line 22, it's the name of the owner.
Oh, okay, yeah. So let me actually go there real quick. So I'll show you this, might as well. So this is the Dusk browser class that we're using, and it's using all these traits. The one that we're going to look at here is interacting with elements. So this trait, what was it, type? Is that the one we're looking for? So you can, oh, this isn't going to help you, but let's go over to the resolver. Sorry about that. So. Wait, let's go back. So resolve for typing. I should have opened PHP Storm so I can just command click everything. I kind of go back and forth and use both. Okay, so the idea here is that the first thing it's going to do is try to do a find by ID. And then if that doesn't work, it's going to try to find the first input with the name or the text area. So yeah, so it'll do text areas and inputs with the same method. Yeah, good question. Thank you. That's pretty important. So this is kind of, like I said, getting down into the abstraction stuff that's really nice. But I definitely encourage you to go through this browser class. It's not very long, and all these traits, and just kind of see how it works. It'll probably take you an hour to dive through this source, I bet. Okay. Sorry. I have to jump into full screen mode here. Okay. I already kind of talked about these. I guess it's a little redundant. These are kind of some of the reasons why I like to work with Laravel with this automation stuff. The bond to database migrations. This framework has, in my opinion, the best database migrations. PHP just came out with some database migrations that look really promising too. I wish they had those when I was using PHP. But I love using database migrations because I can model the data I'm scraping really quickly and get it into the database. Very rapid development. And then the service container. If you've used Symfony before, you understand like how powerful the version control the container is. So here's just a quick example of like what the scheduler looks like in Laravel. So you can kind of see this Fluent API that happens. These are some commands, the console commands that you run for Artisan browser download would be the command. And this scheduler is going to run that hourly. And then the other one, it's going to make sure it doesn't overlap. So if there's already one running, like if it takes longer than a minute, it's not going to overlap. Because if you're doing that without overlapping every minute and it takes longer than a minute, you're just going to continually pile up. So there's some abstractions here with like running processes that kind of you have to be careful with. Just a word of caution, make sure you know what you're doing. So the custom console commands, this is like mission control for all of my browser automation. They're all in console commands because it's easy to run one-off commands. The scheduler uses them, and then the console just adds a bunch of like conveniences, and then you can use the service container as well, which I can kind of show you how my the little project I'm going to show you here, and just how that powers everything. So the queues can actually trigger like console commands as well. So you can reuse your console commands even with a queue runner. And it has, like Laravel has a built-in queue worker that runs. You can use like Beanstalk or Redis or Amazon's service. I prefer Redis, probably just because I haven't worked with any of the other ones. But Redis is like multi-purpose for me in my Laravel environment. It can handle sessions, it can handle caching, and it can handle queues. So depending on your performance needs, though, that might not be the best. So then here's like an example of a queue that it's just really basic, but this is like an API controller that just validates that a URL is valid. And if that's not true, then it will throw a 422 response, throw an exception that creates a 422 validation response. And then it just dispatches this to the queue. That's going to process asynchronously, and then it just responds with a 202 saying, yeah, we got your request and we're working on it. Oops. And then here's kind of like the basic, like this is the queue handler part. So you can see I'm just logging out to the log, the URL, and then I'm calling the artisan console through the queue with the URL that's passed through the constructor of this queue. I didn't put the whole class in here. So
Yes, it's running the progress.
This here? Oh, I'm sorry. So when we're talking about queues, we're just talking about like we're taking an event and we're putting it into a storage, and it's just going to run asynchronously. Like it's not going to come. This is a web request, an API request. It's not going to wait for that queue to finish. It's just going to push it off to the queue, and then it's going to send you the response. And then that queue happens in the background. It's just a way to trigger like an asynchronous job, but it's not like code asynchronous, meaning just it's going to happen at a later time when the queue actually runs it. So.
And you were showing, I'm sorry, you were showing before with that example, the slide before that was basically only the queue, or we run the queue out.
No, this is the scheduler, but it's the same concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the scheduler, and then there's another console command that runs a queue worker, and that runs constantly. It's constantly pulling your.
So as long as that queue is full, it's constantly.
It's constantly looking for new things to pop off the queue.
And you can run multiple workers against that queue if you need the capacity.
Yeah. So I'll show you the command I'm using. Shows like how you can set the workers and stuff as well. So running the browser automation in Docker, this is like the home stretch. This is the part that hopefully is interesting as well to you. So how do I run PHP browser automation on the server? That just left. That was the question. XVFB is basically how you do it now. You might not need that with Chrome headless. I'm not really sure if you still need it.
You do not.
So for me, it wasn't quite working yet, but hopefully I'm just going to keep playing with it, and eventually, I won't even need this anymore. But this is really handy for simulating a screen basically. And on the next slide, so XVFB is short for X Virtual Frame Buffer. So X is a program on Linux that basically controls like your monitors. I'm probably totally butchering that, but the idea is basically like this is like the virtual frame buffer. So it's an in-memory display server for Unix-like operating systems. It enables you to run graphical applications without a display. So while having the ability to take screenshots. So you can even take screenshots when things fail. Unfortunately, I don't have an example for you tonight. If you look at the Dusk source code or their documentation, you'll see an example of a screenshot. And you could probably source dive through the PHP WebDriver code and find out how to do it. But when your automation fails, you can take a screenshot so you can see what the heck happened, because you don't have a visual indicator here. I still like to replicate failure locally on a console so I can see it in the browser, like launching on my screen. But the screenshot is definitely the only way you're going to find out what the heck happened on your automation. So here's just an example. So you're passing it like what screen to look at. The display setting, I'm not really quite sure what that means, but the 99 is basically like a display environment value, and then like the resolution of the virtual frame buffer. And then the little ampersand, this is how you like run things in the background. So this is just like, this is like my Docker entry point I was just showing you, like that's in the wild, like running it. We'll get into this in a second, a little more. So our requirements for the Docker schedule, I'm calling it the Docker scheduler. I don't really like to like muddy up my application container with all of this Chrome garbage. So I end up building like a separate container when I need web automation. And I mean, the trade-off is that you're copying, the code is in two separate containers, but the way that Docker builds, it's actually pretty consistent. But I'm actually shipping out a container that's only running my scheduler, and it's the same code as my application that's running the web application, but it's like two copies of the code in a separate container. I think that's a fair trade-off though, because I don't want all that other garbage running in my app. like when it doesn't need to. It's only going to run on that one container. So I can split out my scheduler into a separate container that's not, I'm not just running one container for web scheduler queue. I can branch out and scale all of those independently with Docker. I'm not going to really go into that, but yeah, so this gives you independent scaling of your scheduler. So my basic setup that I like is using the official PHP container images. Sorry, I always mix those two up. But, the CLI image for the scheduler and FPM for the container. Docker Compose is like how to orchestrate all of these, run all these containers really simply on my local environment. And then I have Redis and MySQL images as well. So why not the official Selenium image? Well, the first answer is like when I was setting all this up, I was on a pretty tight timeline, and Selenium like blows away all of the packages in Debian, so they're not available. So you have to like go figure out which ones you need to add back for like PHP stuff. And I also wanted my scheduler to, I wanted like the same PHP install and match, like the same modules, the same, it's built from the same way. So I opted to just grab pieces of the official Selenium image and adapt those to my own image. So the actual scheduler, it extends PHP CLI, and then I'm installing Chrome stable. There's a script that comes with it that I grabbed from Selenium that basically takes Chrome out of sandbox mode because Chrome kind of runs in its own container, so it's not necessarily available. You have to kind of get it out of sandbox mode basically, so that you can interact with it. I install Chrome driver, so I don't have to really worry about that in my code. It's just running in the background already for me. Install my modules, my app files, and then I run a custom entry point to all of this stuff. So let's just jump over here and I'll kind of show you this. Okay, so you can kind of see like, I don't know how familiar you are with Docker, but basically just think of these as like run instructions for like, this is based on Debian, the one I'm using is, and then these are just like ways to instruct how to build this image. So I'm setting an environment of the display. I use 99 just because I was kind of messing around with like getting this whole thing working, and it was like really, really frustrating. It took me like 2 days to figure out how to get like all this stuff running properly. So I just kind of stuck with that. Like I said, I'm not an expert in this, but the display is important for azPHP. I'm installing Chrome. I jank this straight from Selenium. WebDriver as well. And then I'm installing my PHP extensions. I'm copying in these Chrome launchers to get it out of sandbox mode and my entry point. And then there's this other script for, and then I'm just making these executable so they can actually run. Copying in the application code. I'm setting my work directory to where I'm putting my code, and then these are like Laravel specific folders that I want to build. So I'm going to show you the entry point real quick. So this entry point is how like XFVB gets all XVFB, sorry. So I have a little shutdown here that will kill those processes and wait for them so that they can close gracefully. I'm grabbing the server number. I believe I got this from Selenium as well. We're basically taking the 99 part out of that display environment variable, and then just setting it here as the server number. I'm running XVFD in the background. I'm running Chrome driver in the background, and then I'm tracking those. Just so if you Control C or try to shut down your containers, it will go run that shutdown function. And then this is how I'm running it. Some people like to use like supervisor to run multiple processes in a container. This is kind of how I do it. I don't think either way is necessarily right or wrong. But I'm using an infinite while loop in Bash to run the scheduler here, and then it's sleeping every 60 seconds. So that simulates what a cron scheduler will do if you set it up with cron tab with Laravel. It runs every 60 seconds. It seems to have stuff to run. Let's see. Actually, I want to start to show this to you, hopefully. So this is like how you might set up downloads. I needed this inside of my scheduler. Um, the code has this, I had this idea of a downloads manager class. And basically I'm hooking in the directory into this Chrome driver. And then my downloads manager I can use in tandem with my browser. And I can wait for downloads to finish and then process them if I need to like download a CSV file. I have an example here that shows you how to do that. Basically, what I've done in this project is I provide my own browser class that you instantiate the Dusk browser, but it kind of has some conveniences like that downloads manager to work with Chrome downloads. I had to like download zip files and extract them and then get a CSV out of them, so that downloads manager class kind of deals with that. A downloaded file class that abstracts like, it extends like SPL file info, basically to work with the actual file once I get it back from the download. And then I have some service container bindings for in the app service provider. Okay, so this is the last part of it. I'm wrapping up here. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of, I'll run it first in the browser, and then, so I just want to show you the download thing and how it works. And then I'll just run the whole thing, kind of demo it. I'm gonna sleep it. Okay. So this is my actual browser. This object here is the Laravel Dusk instance. There's this like fake CSV file in Microsoft that I'm using here. And basically, you can see here, what happens is it clicks the download button, and then Dusk has this like public method that's not really documented until, I'm gonna actually document it because I use it. But it waits using this function that's called every second 10 times. So I give this download 10 seconds to happen, and then if this returns true, then it continues on. So I just check to see if the downloads manager has any files matching the CSV. And then I have a method on the downloads manager to kind of clear out all the files, because I only want to deal with like one file at a time. Otherwise, you don't really know what the file name is sometimes. It's just, that's the way I've dealt with it, is just clearing all the files out, so I know I'm working with a clean slate, and if I match a CSV, that's going to be the one. And then I'm just going to take that, this is where I grab the CSV file after it's downloaded, and then I'm just processing it through that CSV reader to show you like what it looks like. So, I'll show you this, and then I'll show you the just the whole thing running, and then I'll be done.
That's so we don't miss it, right?
Yes. Yeah, because I don't know, I think I like to. Well, I have to sleep in the right spot. Oh, you know what? I'm not running, sorry. This is how I'm doing it. Okay, so now I have Chrome driver running. Now let's show it. Okay. You can even see the download happen. And then I spit out, I took the CSV and I just spit out the names that were in that file.
Sweet.
So kind of cool. And I'll just show you really quick running this. So this is that kernel I was telling you about. I think I disabled the commands. So I just want to, no, I haven't I'm running. Okay, cool. Okay. So I'm not going to show you. Oops. So you can kind of see the. Let's see. Okay, you can see the schedulers running here inside of that scheduler container. It should run and then hopefully, let's see. Yeah, sorry. It only runs every minute. Yep, you can see some action over here in this tab. So I went, I didn't show you this one, but if you go to the repo, you can see it. I went to a sports reference site and I scraped the raw, you click a button and get raw CSV, and you have to do a mouse over to get this data. And then I just put it back into a CSV reader and it's spitting it out here. So you can see my automation is running here. And then, oops, let me keep this going. So this is just going to go to that queue. Give me the response back, and then all I was doing in that queue was spitting out the HTML from the browser. So anyway, those are kind of the 3 ways that I run automation. Let me just wrap up here for you. Let's see. All right, so just real quick, I saved the info for my FBA too. I saved some of my info to the last. We're going to wrap off a couple of these. I wrote a test-driven book on using Lumen, which is just like Laravel in a lot of ways. But I kind of fell in love with it writing little APIs. So I wrote a book on it. So that's out there that you can look at. And then I'm working on this Docker for PHP developers book. I'm self-publishing this one. I really like the self-publish model. It's my favorite. So anyways, this is going to be like a hands-on guide, kind of going in depth with some of the things that I showed you tonight. And it will, kind of walk you through. I personally use like the official PHP image. So there's a lot of examples of that. And then I have some like chapters on even installing like legacy applications and like, using Sahoshin with those so that you can at least have somewhat of security. But I found that like containerizing my legacy applications that I have to deal with, just, help things. But anyway, so yeah, I'm still working on this book. I have like 6 or 7 chapters done, so I'm about halfway through the manuscript, but hopefully look for that. So any last questions? And you can talk to me afterwards as well, and I'll make sure and shoot out like the GitHub link and everything. Yeah.
Are the slides going to be available?
Yeah, I'll try to make them available. I have to make sure like some of the GIFs aren't like copyrighted or something, so I might remove a couple slides or change the images, but yeah, I'll get those out. So I'll try to post them in the user group area so that you guys can all do it. Thank you. So that was it.